I thought this very typical looking Victorian building in a photo taken on a chilly but somewhat sunny English winter's morning was a great subject for a 10-minute drawing. Now, I knew it was going to be pushing it a bit for a 10-minute real-time drawing. So there is 10 minutes of real-time drawing, and then there's a couple of minutes further just where I added a bit of context to the heart of the drawing in double speed time. But trying to capture this colonnade at the front of the Head of Steam building, I imagine it's some sort of museum. Again, this is a photo from my wife's travels, so I wasn't actually there on this occasion. And you can see me doing my normal freehand trick of trying to establish the proportions in a smaller part of our drawing, and then use that, hopefully with it being accurate, as a reference point for the rest. It's a bit tricky, the lower section of this colonnade, because of all the people on the steps themselves, and it's a sloping ground upwards. So all of these things make it just a little less obvious to see the perspective. Often quite a bit more difficult to actually draw the structure as well. It can be hard to place figures on steps because they're now at different levels, and so we can't just go with the normal assumptions or outworkings of a crowd of people with perspective when they're on different levels, and we need to make sure that their heads and their feet are at the right place that still look okay, and the scale between figures is correct. And all of this is a little bit harder when they're on steps. It also means that some figures come up higher and interrupt the main subject behind more. But here I am. Now, I've realised that I'm not going to be able to do as much detail as I would normally do in even one of these 10-minute drawings. And particularly with any sense of value of shading under this portico. I simply won't have time to do that. In fact, what I found was when I looked at this drawing at the end, it was a particularly loosely drawn piece. More, if you like, gesture and freedom in the lines, perhaps a little more speed with them being drawn than I would normally do. Maybe even a hint of, I don't think tentativeness is the right word. But there certainly is, I think, a greater degree of simplification of our scene than I would normally be thinking of doing and trying to do. And I actually really like it. So I would love if at the end, when you see how it looks, if you would let me know whether you also agree with this, that it does have a bit of a lighter, more gestural feel than even other small 10-minute drawings I've done. And if you think it works, or if you feel like it just looks a bit underdone and you think I should have put that extra 5 minutes into it and, if you like, bring it up to the same place that I feel that my other quick drawings reach. I feel like this took me, 14 minutes in real time to do from start to finish, which I would have thought on a cold winter's morning in England was a great speed and style to be able to draw on location with. Because if I was sitting across the road at the distance of the photographer, I don't think the drawing experience would have been much different in terms of what I was seeing or how I was perceiving it, except perhaps the cold. So when I placed those columns, those 4 columns across the front, the reason I was actually quite slow doing it, even though I wasn't drawing anything behind them at the time, was because I was carefully observing what had to fit between them. And I'm not sure if I made a few marks. I think I did between the first 2 columns. But I was having to make sure I allowed enough space to fit the pilasters in and to fit the windows in and the doorway in, but also to be able to shift the view we got of each of them slightly between the columns because the angle of viewing of each one was changing, was increasing, and that was changing what we actually saw. It's really important to understand that when we have a colonnade such as this with equally spaced elements behind it, that as the columns move further away at an angle, what we see between the columns doesn't just become narrower, but it actually changes. We see something different. And I need to capture that slight changing in what we see as I move down the colonnade, even as in this case, when there's only 3 sections between the colonnade. I need to make sure I capture that, because otherwise it will jar in some way. It won't have a sense of reality. It will look approximately right, but there'll be a visual awkwardness even if we can't understand where it comes from. And so that's why it took me so long to actually place those first 4 columns. It was frustrating at the time, I can remember, thinking, I know I have to go fast with this one, and I feel like I'm going a lot slower than normal. But we can't start to put the ink on the paper until we know what we're doing. And we can't know what we're doing until we've observed what we're trying to do in the first place. And this has taken a good chunk of my 15 minutes already. But I'm having a good time, so it doesn't matter. At this point, I'm actually thinking the drawing looks a bit messy. That's my concern. And not that I think that it has to be highly polished, but I just wonder whether the lines, the marks are going to have enough coherence at the end. And by coherence, I don't mean accuracy. I mean the sense that they come together telling the one story the same way. And in the end, I think they did. But again, as I said, I would love to hear your comment. And if you're finding this interesting, if you're finding this series of daily 10-minute drawing exercises helpful, then why not hit the like button? And why not share this video with a friend you have who draws? Why not introduce them to the joys and the improvement of daily 10-minute drawing? And of course, you will find this reference photo on my channel community page so you can have a go drawing it yourself. I'm really enjoying these. I hope you are as well. So we're just about up to the 10 minutes almost. I think I draw this window on the left-hand side of the colonnade in before the 10 minutes is up. Now, you can see me, oh no, I go up and do this, this little decorative section first. But looking at this tree on the left, one of the observation things I did before I started drawing was to look hard to see how far did these branches go across the face of the building. Now, because of the colouring and the light and whatnot, it's not super obvious visually, but they still do. There are branches that still do go across the face of the building. And I want to capture at least some of them because it's part of the effect. It's part of what we see, that there is a visual interruption. And again, if we don't do these, like, we can leave them out. I could have left the tree out, or I could have moved it or changed where the branches were so that none of them were really in front of any detail on the building. But if we do that, then we never learn to draw them. And this is where I think the mindset of, oh, I don't want something that will spoil my artwork, my drawing at the end. This is where having an idea that I'm going to have an artwork at the end is so unhelpful. No, I'm learning to draw, and I need to tackle the things I don't know yet, or that I don't know very well, or that I can't do very well, because that's the way I improve those skills. So it's really important not to be tempted to overly simplify our drawing. It's one thing to simplify the subject so that we can do it in the style we want, in the time we have. That's totally different to simplifying our subject so that it's all easy for us, that there's no challenges, that we won't be afraid of ruining something, because that's not helpful. And if there's an area that I know I avoid, or I change the reference so that it's not there, then I really need to tackle that head on. And that's what I did with people in the street and with cars and whatnot. I drew them, and sometimes I just drew those subjects. And very quickly, I learned that they were no more difficult or easy than the architecture, just different. And I learned how to do them in the same way I learned how to do the architecture, with practice. And here we have it. What do you think? Do you think it works? I'd love to hear your comment. Does it look a little bit too sketchy, a bit too on edge? Does it look finished enough? Or do you think it has a nice gestural coherence to it? G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, I hope you found this helpful. If you haven't hit the like button by now, please, why not do it now? And have a go drawing this. But whatever you draw and however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.